It happened in the span of a heartbeat. One moment, the boy on the bridge was laughing, holding the tiny leash wrapped loosely around his fingers. The next, the world shattered in a burst of panic and a scream that cut through the morning air. Like a siren, the leash had snapped. The little German shepherd, no more than 12 weeks old, had slipped under the rusted rail and vanished, gone. Just like that. The bystanders froze. For a moment no one moved. No one even processed what they'd just seen. Then someone shouted. He fell. It was a pedestrian. Bridge, 19 feet high, spanning the cold, rocky creek that curved behind Linden Trail. Beneath it, jagged stones jutted from the shallow current, slick with algae. The fall alone could have killed something that small, but the puppy hadn't made a sound on impact. No yelp, no whine, just silence, and then chaos. The boy's name was Cody, 8 years old, small for his age, dressed in a raincoat 2 sizes, too big. He collapsed at the edge of the bridge, tears flooding his eyes before he could even say the words. Rex. Rex, no. A man ran forward, late 20s, tall, wearing a utility vest. His name was Jordan Vega, a former Army medic who had been jogging nearby when he heard the scream. He didn't stop to ask questions. He vaulted the side of the bridge, dropped onto the dirt path below, and charged toward the creek. Others followed. Slowly, phones out, panic rising. But Jordan moved like he had done this before. His boots hit the rocks with force, his eyes scanning the underbrush and waterline. Then he saw it. Just ahead, in the bend of the current, a small shape lay limp beside the stones. The puppy. Rex. Jordan shouted back, "I've got him! Stay there!" and dropped to his knees. The pup was motionless. Mud clung to his fur. One leg was bent at a wrong angle, but his chest, barely, moved. Shallow breaths. Weak, but there. Jordan gently placed his hands around the tiny body and lifted him, cradling the broken pup like glass. "Stay with me, little guy," he murmured. "Come on, don't give up now." By the time he made it up the slope, Eliza Hart, the town's local vet, was already pushing through the crowd with her truck keys in hand. She'd gotten a frantic call from someone who'd seen the fall on social media. The town was small. Everyone knew everyone. She didn't wait for permission. "In my back seat now!" Jordan climbed in without argument, Rex still limp in his arms. Cody stood at the edge of the bridge, sobbing uncontrollably in his mother's arms. "It was my fault. I wasn't holding tight enough." "No," Jordan said firmly from the truck window. "It was an accident, and we're not letting it end like this." Eliza drove like a woman possessed. Back at the clinic, Rex was placed on the table. Oxygen, warmth, fluids. His ribs were bruised. Left leg fractured, internal bruising, maybe worse. Eliza didn't sugarcoat it. "It's bad," she whispered to Jordan. "But he's young. If he's got fight in him, we might stand a chance." "Then you're not giving up on him," Jordan said. "Because I've seen what second chances look like." Eliza looked at him, at the scars along his arm, the rigid way he still stood like a soldier, and understood. They worked for hours. Meanwhile, Cody sat in the clinic waiting room, his coat still wet, Rex's chewed-up toy clutched in his hand. His mother tried to speak, to explain, to soothe, but the boy wouldn't hear it. "He's my best friend," he kept whispering. "He picked me." Across town, people who'd witnessed the fall started showing up at the clinic. Some came with blankets, others with donations. One woman dropped off a basket of German Shepherd puppy food. A firefighter left a note. "If he pulls through, I'll help cover rehab." The town, for once, wasn't divided by opinions or noise. They were united in heartbreak. Night fell. Eliza stepped into the waiting room just past 11 p.m., her scrubs stained, her eyes exhausted. Everyone looked up. She gave the faintest smile. He made it through the worst of it. He's sedated, stable. I can't promise anything beyond tonight, but for now, he's here. Cody burst into tears again. This time, not out of grief, but relief. He ran to Jordan and hugged him without a word. Jordan, stunned, slowly knelt and held the boy back. "He wouldn't have made it without you," Cody whispered. Jordan shook his head. "No, kid. He wouldn't have made it without you believing he could." That night, Rex was moved into a quiet recovery room. Soft lighting, heat pads. Eliza placed Cody's drawing, a stick figure boy with a big-eared puppy, beside the crate. The caption read, "Me and Rex, forever." As she turned off the light, Rex stirred, a soft, high-pitched whimper, barely audible, but a sound, and to Eliza, It wasn't just breath. It was hope. The clinic lights hummed softly in the early morning, casting long beams of pale yellow across the tile floor. Eliza hadn't left Rex's side once during the night. She had propped herself in a worn office chair beside his recovery crate, sipping black coffee as she monitored the fragile rhythm of his breath. Every few minutes, she would glance up at the monitor, then back at the small puppy curled in blankets. His chest rose and fell, slow and uneven, but steady. By sunrise, something changed. Rex shifted. His leg was splinted and secured, his bruised ribs wrapped, and painkillers kept his body still. But now, for the first time since the fall, his ears twitched. He let out a low whimper, followed by a weak, almost imperceptible flick of his tail beneath the blanket. Eliza leaned forward instantly. "Rex," she whispered, careful not to startle him. "Good morning, little fighter." He opened one eye halfway, glazed and blinking. She didn't touch him. She didn't reach into the crate. Instead, she placed Cody's crayon drawing, the one that had stayed on the shelf all night, just where Rex could see it. "He's waiting for you, you know, the boy. He hasn't slept either." As if on cue, the front door jingled softly. Cody was already walking through the lobby, gripping his stuffed shepherd plushie with white knuckles. His mother trailed behind, quieter than usual, her eyes hollow with worry. Cody stopped when he saw Eliza, and for a brief moment, his feet didn't move. "Is he still?" he started, voice cracking. Eliza nodded. "He's not out of the woods, Cody, but he's in there, and he wagged his tail this morning." The boy didn't speak. He just walked straight to the crate and knelt beside it. Rex turned his head the moment he heard him, and though his body barely moved, his eyes widened. The connection between them snapped back into place instantly. Cody spoke softly, placing the plushie against the crate door. "You're not broken, okay? You just fell. I drop stuff all the time. Mom says it's just gravity being rude." Eliza chuckled quietly from the corner of the room, but her amusement quickly faded when she saw what happened next. Rex lifted his paw, just slightly, and let it rest on the inside of the crate door, directly across from Cody's hand. Cody reached forward and pressed his palm to the glass, and In that moment, Eliza realized this wasn't just a recovery, it was a reunion. The rest of the day passed in gentle steps. Rex remained on fluids and limited movement, but his body began responding better to treatment. He was able to blink fully now. He responded to sound, and he stayed awake longer between naps. Word spread quickly. By midday, a local news crew had shown up at the clinic after catching wind of the story. Eliza agreed to a short interview, strictly outside. She refused to let anyone disturb Rex's progress. "He doesn't need cameras," she said. "He needs healing." Cody, however, had become a symbol. The footage of him on the bridge, sobbing for the puppy, had gone viral overnight. But no one had seen what came after, the part where he returned every single day, sat in silence beside the crate, and spoke kindness into the cracks of something too small and too hurt to understand what had happened. Jordan Vega came by that afternoon, quiet and solemn. He hadn't wanted the attention either, but the town had hailed him as a hero. All he'd done, he said, was what anyone should have done. Still, when he stepped into the room and saw Rex lift his head, his breath caught. "Look at you," Jordan whispered, crouching beside Cody. "Tougher than all of us." Rex let out a low huff, his tail twitching once more. Jordan glanced at Eliza. "When's he out of the woods?" She exhaled. "Physically, if things keep going like this, maybe a few weeks. But emotionally?" She looked toward Cody, who was gently brushing his fingers against the crate. "That'll take longer, but he's got the right guide." That night, as the clinic dimmed and Eliza sat reviewing medical charts, she glanced once more at the crate. Rex was asleep now, curled into the softest position he'd managed yet. His breathing was stronger, more rhythmic. He looked peaceful, and, in the corner, tucked beside the crate, was Cody, fast asleep on a pillow, his hand still touching the glass. Eliza didn't wake him. She just pulled a blanket over his shoulders and turned off the light, because she knew, better than anyone, that sometimes the body heals in medicine, but the heart heals in silence. And in that silence, a boy and his broken puppy were writing the first lines of a story that no one else could ever tell. By the third morning, the mood in the clinic had changed. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about watching a dog who should have never survived the fall begin to live again, inch by inch. Eliza could feel it when she walked into the recovery room just after dawn and saw Rex sitting up on his own for the first Time. His back leg remained carefully braced, and his ribs still moved with tender breaths, but he was upright, alert, eyes shining with something new, awareness, presence. Cody was already there, seated on the floor in his usual spot, with a fresh drawing clutched in his hands. This one was different. It showed Rex not lying down but running, ears flying back, tongue lolling, chasing a ball across a green field. The boy hadn't said much while he worked on it. He just sat beside Rex's crate in silence, occasionally glancing up and murmuring words like, "You're gonna get there. You'll see." Rex had watched him the whole time. Now, as Cody gently slid the picture under the crate door, something extraordinary happened. Rex scooted forward, not easily, not gracefully, but with clear intent, until his front paw rested on the edge of the paper. His tail, barely visible under the blanket, gave 2 small thumps. Cody's smile stretched across his entire face. "You like it? That's you. That's where we're going next." In the adjacent room, Eliza watched through the observation window, her hands tightening around a coffee cup that had gone cold long ago. Jordan stood beside her, arms crossed, the faintest of smiles tugging at his usually serious face. "He's already following the kid with his eyes before he even walks." "In," Jordan noted. "That's not just comfort, that's bond." Eliza nodded slowly. "I've seen service dogs take weeks to respond like this. But with Rex and Cody, it's like he knew him before he fell." Jordan looked at her. "You think maybe he did?" She shook her head. "Not exactly. But I think trauma recognizes itself. Cody sees the world through the same cracks Rex does. That's what makes them understand each other without needing words." Around midday, something shifted again. This time, not with Rex, but with Cody. June arrived carrying an envelope from the school district. Cody had been granted medical leave since the accident, but this letter was a reminder that he'd be returning to class soon, expected to rejoin his peers, pick up his old routine, try to move on. But as he sat quietly on the clinic bench, holding the letter, his hands started to tremble. "I don't want to go back without him," he whispered. "It won't feel right." June crouched beside him. "We'll talk about it at home, okay? You don't have to decide everything today." But Rex, still lying on his bed, gave a short, soft bark. Just one. Everyone in the room froze. Cody looked up, startled. "Did he just—" Eliza stepped closer, stunned. "That's the first sound he's made since the fall. No crying, no whining, nothing." Rex barked again, this time a bit louder. Then he shifted his body and dragged himself forward enough for his paw to tap the side of the crate where Cody's backpack had been resting. Eliza leaned down and gently opened the crate. Rex didn't lunge, he didn't panic. He crawled, slow and determined, until his head rested on Cody's shoe. The boy reached down slowly, tears rising, and placed both hands around the dog's face. "You're telling me it's okay, huh? You're not leaving either?" The third bark was softer, but, to Cody, it was loud enough to hear everything he needed. That night, Eliza held an emergency meeting with the clinic board. The topic wasn't surgery or medication, it was placement. Cody had begun asking questions, carefully, nervously, about what would happen once Rex healed, if he would go back to the shelter, if someone else would adopt him, if he would be gone before Cody could say goodbye. No one on the board hesitated. They voted unanimously to begin the transition. Rex wouldn't be going back to the shelter. He was going home. Of course, there would be paperwork, a rehabilitation plan, official, sign-off from a behavioral specialist. But none of that mattered. In the moment, Eliza stepped back into the recovery room, knelt beside Cody, and whispered, "Would you like to be Rex's person? Forever?" Cody didn't respond at first. He just buried his face into the soft fur of the dog who had somehow found his way back from the edge of death and nodded. The connection between them had never been about rescue. It had been about recognition. Cody didn't just save Rex. Rex had reminded Cody that broken things can still breathe, and more than that, they can learn to run again. The next chapter in Rex's recovery began not with a medical milestone, but with something far more ordinary: grass. For the first time since the fall, Eliza opened the side door of the clinic and watched as Rex limped slowly across the lawn, one paw lifting gingerly as he adjusted to the soft ground beneath him. The brace on his leg was still tight, still critical, but he was mobile. More importantly, he was choosing to move. Cody stood nearby with a tennis ball in his hands. He didn't throw it. He knew better. But he held it out like a promise, his fingers curled around it gently. "When you're ready," he said, not expecting a response. But Rex's eyes didn't leave the ball. Eliza, observing from a few feet back, felt something bloom in her chest. "That dog has more determination in him than most grown adults," she muttered, mostly to herself. Jordan, leaning against the fence with his arms crossed, nodded. "And the kid's the reason he didn't give up." The past few days had unfolded like a slow-motion miracle. Rex's wounds had continued to heal, and his strength was returning little by little. He still needed help getting up and down, and pain meds kept his pace tempered, but something had shifted permanently in his spirit. There was a new brightness in his eyes, especially when Cody entered the room. He began to respond to commands: sit, stay, even come, when called by Cody's voice. And most stunning of all, his tail now wagged with deliberate, slow arcs whenever the boy approached. Cody had begun talking more too. At school, his teachers noticed the change. He was more focused, less withdrawn. He still struggled with loud noises, still tensed at sudden movement, but there was something grounding him now. Something real and breathing and fiercely loyal. Eliza knew it wouldn't be long before the adoption could be finalized. That night, she sat with June in the office, paperwork spread across the desk. The shelter board had expedited the process after Jordan offered to sponsor the remaining medical costs. They'd agreed unanimously. This wasn't just a pet placement. It was a recovery in motion. Two souls who had already chosen each other. But even as the logistics fell into place, the story took an unexpected turn. Just as the sun dipped behind the ridge on a chilly Wednesday evening, Eliza returned from a home visit to find Jordan pacing in the clinic hallway. "It's Rex," he said, tension in his voice. "Something's wrong." Her heart dropped. In the recovery room, Rex was standing, rigid, teeth clenched but not growling. His body trembled, and his head tilted low, an old trauma response. Cody was in the corner, frozen mid-sentence, his eyes wide. "What happened?" Eliza asked, dropping to one knee beside him. Jordan motioned to the window. There was construction outside. Metal slammed against concrete. It echoed through the building. Of course, the sound must have mimicked the impact from the fall. Cody stepped forward slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. It sounded like when he hit the rocks. Eliza watched as Rex struggled between instinct and presence. His muscles were taut, his eyes wild, but he hadn't lashed out. He hadn't run. He was fighting the memory, and Cody was watching him do it. Eliza turned to him, kneeling. "Do you want to help?" Cody looked at her, unsure. "Try his name," she said softly. "Remind him where he is." The boy nodded, then knelt just a few feet away. He didn't reach for the leash. He didn't move too fast. He just placed his hand on the floor and whispered, "Rex, you're not falling anymore. You're home now." It wasn't magic, it wasn't instant, but Rex's body slowly eased. His shoulders lowered. His breath came slower. He turned toward Cody and inched forward, his head dropping into the boy's lap with a deep, aching sigh. Jordan exhaled in relief. Eliza felt the burn of tears in her throat, because this wasn't just a trigger moment. It was a test, one that proved what none of them had dared say aloud yet. Cody wasn't just helping Rex heal. Rex was helping Cody trust the world again, too. Later that night, June sat at the foot of her son's bed as he brushed through Rex's fur with soft, patient strokes. The room was quiet, lit only by a small lamp and the glow of warmth between the two of them. "You know," June said gently, "I think this puppy was sent to us for a reason." Cody didn't look up. "Not to fix me." "No, sweetheart, to walk with you while you fix yourself." Rex rolled over onto his side, exposing his belly, tail flopping lazily against the blanket. Cody smiled for the first time in days, and for Eliza, who saw them again the next morning, it was obvious. The dog who had once fallen into a creek and barely survived wasn't just recovering, he was rising, and he was taking a little boy with him. The morning of the final checkup arrived with a hush, as if even the weather understood something meaningful was about to unfold. The sky stretched soft and pale, the kind of morning where the air held a promise instead of a chill. Eliza stood outside the clinic door, clipboard in hand, waiting, not for a patient, not even for a dog, but for a moment, the one she'd hoped. For since the second Rex had been pulled from that creek bed, motionless and half-broken, at precisely 8:03 a.m., a red car rolled into the lot. The passenger door opened, and Cody stepped out, cradling Rex's favorite plush ball in his arms. He didn't look nervous. He looked ready. Rex followed behind, tail swaying in slow rhythm, walking completely unassisted for the first time since the fall. The splint had been removed 4 days earlier, and his limp had faded to a barely noticeable drag. What remained was strength, quiet, hard-earned, and steady. Jordan arrived a few minutes later, parking his truck and strolling toward the clinic with a knowing smile. "You think today's the day?" he asked Eliza as he joined her near the door. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked down the hall where Rex had just stepped through the entrance, nose sniffing the air like it all felt new again. Then she glanced at Cody, taller now, eyes clearer, voice stronger. He held the leash without fear, without tension. "I think today's the start," she finally said. The checkup was routine, but the meaning behind it wasn't. Eliza ran her fingers gently down Rex's spine, checked the mobility of the once fractured leg, tested his reflexes and heart rate. Everything was strong, stable. There were still scars, of course, on his ribs, behind his ears, but none of them held pain anymore. They told a story, but not of suffering, of survival. After the exam, Eliza handed Cody a folder. Inside was the final adoption certificate, signed and sealed. He opened it slowly like he was afraid it might vanish if he blinked. "This means he's mine?" he asked. "No," Eliza smiled. "This means he's always been yours. Now the world just agrees." Cody hugged Rex tightly, burying his face into the thick fur at his neck. Rex licked his ear in response and let out a low, joyful huff, the sound of a soul that had waited long enough to belong. They all went outside afterward. Eliza insisted on a few photos for the clinic's bulletin board. The light was perfect. Rex sat beside Cody on the grass, the leash looped loosely between them. Behind them, Jordan stood with his arms folded, pride softening the edges of his usual stoicism. June, holding a camera, captured everything with shaking hands and damp eyes. But the real moment came after the pictures, when Cody knelt beside Rex and whispered, "Want to try it now?" Rex tilted his head. The backyard of the clinic had a small agility ramp, just a few feet high with gentle slopes on each side. Weeks ago, it would have been unthinkable, too steep, too painful, too much. But today, Cody stepped up to the bottom of the ramp and waited. Rex hesitated. The memory of the fall still lived somewhere inside him. You could see it in the way his paws paused mid-step, the way his ears flicked back, unsure. But then Cody reached out and said the same words he'd said when he first sat beside that crate. Back when the world still felt uncertain. "You're not falling anymore." And Rex moved, one paw, then another. He climbed slowly but surely up the ramp, his balance steady, his heart pounding. At the top he stopped. Below, Cody waited. Rex looked down. And then, without panic, without fear, he leapt. It wasn't far. It wasn't even high, but it was everything. He landed with a solid thud, stumbled for half a step, and then caught himself. Everyone watching held their breath. Then Cody laughed, a full, clear, bright sound that hadn't been heard in that yard before. Rex barked, spun in a little half circle and barked again. For the first time, he was playing. Eliza couldn't stop smiling. "There he is," she said softly. Jordan turned to her. "The kid or the dog?" "Both," she answered. In the days that followed, the video of the leap went viral. Not the fall. The world had already seen that. But this moment, caught on a phone camera by a nurse in the parking lot, spread for a different reason. Because people didn't just see a puppy landing on his feet, they saw a comeback. The local paper ran a piece titled, "The Boy Who Never Gave Up and the Dog Who Tried Again." Schools asked Cody to come speak. He declined, but said maybe someday. He was still healing after all. But one thing was certain. Wherever he went, Rex would go too. They became a fixture in town, at the park, at the library, on weekend walks near the river, but never over the bridge. Not yet. That part would come. And when it did, it wouldn't be a moment of fear. It would be a memory rewritten. Because sometimes falling doesn't mean the end. Sometimes it means you're about to rise higher than anyone thought possible, together.